I'm Kerry Shale.
And I'm Daniel Crespin.
And this is Bob Dylan.
Approximately.
Well, my ship's been split to splinters, and it's sinking fast. I'm drowning in the poison. Got no future, got no past. But my heart is not weary. It's light and it's free. I've got nothing but affection for all those who've sailed with me. So that's my favorite verse of Mississippi, but they're all gold.
It's a fantastic song, isn't it?
It is.
It can be held against any of his songs.
Absolutely.
Really.
It was one of my favorites of his songs, and probably certainly one of my favorite of his last, the later Bob. So we're gonna pile into to Mississippi. We're gonna get down to Mississippi.
Down to Mississippi.
Let me bring people up to speed if they're not familiar with this particular masterpiece of a song. I never really paid as much attention to it as I did when all the various versions came out on Telltale Signs. Because I think not that it's bad, but I think all the Telltale Signs versions are much superior. The Love and Theft version, for some reason, because it's perfectly fine. The instrumentation is much more complex, but it just doesn't grab me as much as the Daniel Lanois produced versions. And I think Daniel Lanois is a better producer than Jack Frost, whoever he is.
I wonder who that is.
Yeah. So what do you make?
Well, it's interesting. We were recording a bonus episode yesterday, and I was talking about how I think I was relating it to Lovesick. How a lot of in Dylan's kind of what I call second coming of Dylan from Time Out of Mind onwards.
Yeah.
A lot of what I love is a lot of the arrangement goes entirely against the story of the song, and I think in Mississippi on the Love and Theft version, it's a really whimsical ding 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 ding. It's a really whimsical little melodic thing, but when you actually read the lyrics, there's some real pain in there.
Huge pain. Yeah.
Whereas the solo acoustic stuff from the Time Out of Mind sessions does feel far more. I don't know. There's a painful. Yeah. Fire in the sky, pain falling down.
Well, it's a song about pain, isn't it? I mean, I chose to read the more upbeat version where he only says, my ship's been split to splinters and it's sinking fast. I'm drowning in the poison. But I love the bit where he says, my heart is not weary. It's light and it's free.
Well, it's interesting. He kind of goes against everything he says multiple times in this song. There's, he's gone on about early on in the song about being done with love, and then he goes, all my powers of expression and thoughts so sublime could never do you justice in reason. Or, I mean, it's the most romantic thing for this genius poet to be saying, even I can't put into words your beauty and the love I have.
I remember the first time I heard that, thoughts so sublime. I thought, he's actually saying, I mean, I wouldn't say that any of my thoughts in my entire life have been sublime. And I think he's taken the piss out of himself slightly. But I also think it's very beautiful.
Well, yes, and I love it as a Dylan fan when he occasionally does that. And I think he does that a lot on Rough and Rowdy Ways, like False Prophet and stuff. It's tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah.
But he is saying, I am this fucking legend, and this is what I've got to deal with. So you said, well, my ship's been split to splinters and it's sinking fast. I'm drowning in the poison. I've got no future, got no past. But my heart is not weary, it's light and it's free. I've got nothing but affection for all those who've sailed with me. It's a really interesting... he's looking back. To me, it's a song about reaching the other side of life, but you can accept that you've got regrets. There's a wisdom in this to me. There's something very human about it. But a lot of people have got theories that it's about the state of the nation and America and stuff like that. I don't see that.
That's funny. That never even occurred to me. I mean, hearing you say the lyrics, it is funny sometimes. You hear somebody else say the same lyrics you've literally just said. Made me realize, or think anyway, that when he says, I'm drowning in the poison, got no future, got no past, it's like there he is. He's drowning. And at the very moment that he's drowning in poison, metaphorically, or, I think, he's forgiving and he's happy and he's light and he's free. Maybe because he's drowning, maybe because he knows he's about to die, that the suffering will be over. And now it's like, hey guys, everything's cool. It's something I've certainly never read in a song before.
Yeah.
Heard in a song before. And I don't think it's about the state of the nation.
No, I don't think so.
I mean, I don't even understand how that could be. It seems so. It seems to me that there are three different parallel Dylans in the story, which often happens in his stories. There's the cosmic drifter who's feeling like a stranger nobody sees, the invisible drifter. There's the burned out lover. Last night I knew you, tonight I don't, and then the mysterious Rosie, who I'm sure we'll get to. And then there's the resigned philosopher. Say anything you wanna. I have heard it all.
Yeah.
And they're all telling their stories, and they're all mixing their stories up. Should we talk about Rosie? Because I think we both, just before we started, I think we both said that was our favorite. Well, another of our favorite bits. I think the mysterious Rosie. What is it that grabs you about that?
So it's interesting because I was first kind of getting into Dylan. I was, 17, 18, and I was with a girl called Rosie. So, so she used to be really annoyed at this song because I could do that all the time. Is it a love song? I mean, I'd written down something that I now can't find, which is about where it's from, because there's a few source material things from this. Oh, here it is. So yeah, only one thing I did wrong, stayed in Mississippi a day too long, is from a traditional folk song with Rosie in the title. She's the lover that this song is gone to. So, which is why he says the things Rosie said later in the song. That's what people have theorised. Okay. It's kind of a direct nod to the source material, I guess.
Okay. I've got a theory about that too.
Joe, yeah.
It's about the state of America. No. Okay. When he was asked, I found this online, he was asked in 2008 to name the lyric or poem that most influenced him, that most influenced Bob Dylan. He said it was My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose by Robbie Burns. And then I noticed, I thought, so the rose is really important to him. Rosie is really important to him. And just off the top of my head, I'm sure there's more. I thought there's Rosie in Mississippi. There's Rosemary in Rosemary Lily and Jack of Hearts. There's Rosemarie in Going to Acapulco. And I'll just bet you that there are more. And then I looked up song lyrics. People carry roses, make promises by the hour. I mean, the reason that he loves, I think, the rose is that, or rather he loves the poem, My Love's Like a Red, Red Rose, is that Rosie equals love.
Love.
To Bob. People carry roses. Roses are red, violets are blue. Time is beginning to crow. And I picked up a rose and poked through my clothes when the deal goes down. Which is anyway. I'm sure it's kind of littered with roses and rose petals.
Well, it's like we've said, isn't it? A lot of his love songs later on in his career, if you can call this a love song, it's far too complicated to be just that. But it does feel like he's addressing kind of womankind more than a single person to me. It's what women represent to him at that time. And it's weird, we were doing this bonus episode yesterday and talking all about this, so it's very fresh in my mind, but we were talking about, there can be no space for Bob for a traditional relationship because he's always touring, and there's the line in the song, I've been in trouble ever since I set my suitcase down. It's kind of like he's got to keep moving to stay out of trouble.
Absolutely. And the end of this Rosie section is so many things that we never will undo. I know you're sorry. I'm sorry too. Now, to me, I remember the first time I heard that, I thought, what? Bob Dylan is apologizing to a woman, to someone he's done wrong to. Although I think it's a typical Bob Dylan because he says, I know you're sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry too. I'll be big about it because you've apologized first in my song. I've made you apologize. But still, and so many things we never will undo is I know you're sorry, I'm sorry too. Actually, it's very beautiful and it's so sad.
Yeah.
And Rosie's long gone. But as you say, it's sort of all women, but maybe now he's approaching that sick of love phase where there will be no more Rosie's.
Yeah. There's a few... It's rare that I kind of look into a Bob Dylan song and can find some concrete things he says about it, and I'd just like to read a couple. So, but the song was pretty much laid out intact melodically, lyrically and structurally, but Lanois didn't see it. He thought it was pedestrian. He took it down this Afro-polyrhythm route, multi-rhythm drumming, that sort of thing. Polyrhythm has its place, but it doesn't work for knife-like lyrics trying to convey majesty and heroism.
Wow. That wasn't Chronicles. That was an interview, was it?
That was an interview, yeah. Yeah, and he's also... This is because we were talking about, it was originally in the Time Out of Mind sessions. But
right, yeah.
I've been criticised for not putting my best songs on certain albums, but it is because I consider that the song isn't ready yet. It's not been recorded right. With all of my records, there's an abundance of material left off, stuff that, for a variety of reasons, doesn't make the final cut. Except on this album, for which we recut the song Mississippi. We had that on the Time Out of Mind album. It wasn't recorded very well, but thank God... Yeah, it goes against what we said. It wasn't recorded very well, but thank God it never got out, so we recorded it again. But something like that would never have happened 10 years ago. You'd have probably all heard the lousy version of it, and I'd have never re-recorded it. I'm glad for once to have had the opportunity to do so. Which was interesting to read, because as a Dylan fan, I'm so annoyed at some of the songs he leaves off albums.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice for him to
but I do think
explain that a little.
It's not that he has bad taste, clearly, but when he spent all that time looking for the thin, wild Mercury sound in the studio in Nashville, he had this thing in his head that he heard, but he was trying to manifest it in the studio, and I guess he wasn't able to manifest that thing with Lanois when they were recording Mississippi, but to normal ears, like particularly the what they call. I think it's called Take One. It's the simple one with just him, and people are pretty sure it's Lanois, although there's no credit, with Dylan sort of on rhythm and Lanois doing a really beautiful, subtle sort of Charlie McCoy-like lead guitar. And his voice is so vulnerable, and I can only think it's before the song put on its armor, before Dylan kind of armored it.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. And it sounds like he's trapped in the heart of it. It really sounds, that particular version, I guess may very well be, they say it's Take One, is so defenseless. I mean, in a way, the way a demo is. Like when you hear demos of famous songs, they always sound very... innocent. I remember there was an album of Crosby, Stills and Nash demos they released, which was basically the Crosby, Stills and Nash album, all the songs. And although the arrangements were not that great, and certainly they weren't paying much attention to the actual playing of the guitars, but I find it very beautiful in its absolute simplicity and sort of what's honesty or sort of just vulnerability, basically.
I really I can really see what you're saying with he's kind of hiding behind the arrangement in the Love and Theft version.
Yeah, I think so.
It's one of the catchiest, melodies he's ever written. I think that like conventional melodies, ding 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 ding. Yeah, it's really catchy, and that sort of brightness of that arrangement, as I say, sort of completely masks the pain in the lyrics and the thought in the lyrics.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that he's really good at, and it makes sense. And I think that's probably why he didn't want to release anything. I mean, the other versions are still much more complex, the other versions on Telltale Signs. And I feel that there's still a bit of vulnerability there. But I don't understand. They're all brilliant. I mean, I'm not sure, because there were a few that came out also on the next bootleg, the sort of Infidels era. And I think there were a couple of Mississippis on that too. I think there's been more Mississippis, on now sort of certified Bob Dylan albums than any other song, really. There's a lot of them.
It's a huge amount of different takes from the Time Out of Mind sessions of different songs.
Yeah. And they're, all the Mississippis are great. I put them all on a playlist. I listen to them all. I never get tired of them.
I'd love to, and he never has, but I'd love to. He had a very long period of live shows from sort of 88 to the sort of mid-2000s, where he would do sort of 7 electric songs, then he'd do a mini acoustic set and then go back with the band. And I'd love to have heard him do Mississippi just on his own acoustically. He never did that, but like those sessions are. It's almost too raw, maybe too vulnerable. I think so. I often think he rarely ever does Visions of Joanna live, and he had like 2 years of doing most of the time live. And I often think with those songs, there must be some memory in there or something that's a bit too vulnerable that he doesn't want to. There are certain songs I imagine that he's written that, there's still a pang of pain within them.
Pouring down. And what do you make of State of Mississippi, A Day Too Long? Do you have any theories about that? Because it's completely mystifying, isn't it?
Yeah, well, apparently that line, Only One Thing I Did Wrong, Stayed in Mississippi a Day Too Long, is from a traditional folk song.
Oh, I see.
I haven't looked into to the full thing of that folk song. I didn't have... I don't think I could find it, actually. But yeah, it's sort of... To me, and this is completely subjective, but it feels like he's downplaying why the relationship failed. Perhaps it's kind of this: if only I'd, hadn't stayed in Mississippi a day too long, we could have worked things out.
Yeah, shit.
Oh, shucks. Nice to see. I'll see you around.
Yeah, exactly. It could be just as simple as that. I mean, it made me think of Mississippi, and the one time I have been in Mississippi when I did the New Orleans to Memphis. I drove up Highway 61 from New Orleans to Memphis, which I certainly this was over 30 years ago. Don't know what it's like now, but back then it was an amazing life experience. And when you do pass into Mississippi, it's a definite place, and even now. Mississippi, I believe, is still, as it was then, the poorest state in the 50 states.
Wow.
And you see stuff that you can't quite believe just from the highway, just from driving in your rented car. You see antebellum mansions, and then less than 5 minutes later, you see shotgun shacks. Like, I'd never understood what a shotgun shack was until I saw one, these very long ones which you can fire a shotgun through. That's why they're called shotgun shacks. And, people living in desperate poverty right next to people living in mansions.
Well, it's
no very
wonder
American. That's state of it. Now, the thing is, maybe that's it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they're talking about, state of the nation. It must be, because Mississippi, in a way, is... America.
It's no wonder it's the birthplace of the blues, and Delta blues and all this comes from that poverty and wealth inequality and all that stuff. Am I right in saying that Highway 61, it basically follows the Mississippi River, right? Yeah.
Here's a Mississippi story. When I was in Mississippi with my now ex, and she really wasn't into it, but I really had to do it, and we traveled up the Mississippi together, and I was going through my big blues period. I was listening to nothing but blues, and it was sort of indicative of where I was in my head, and it was a kind of a dark but melodious place. I was drowning in the poison, but I was enjoying the music. Anyway, so we're driving to Mississippi, and the thing that I do when I go to a place, be it Australia or New Zealand or whatever, is I listen to the sound of the people talking, and I talk like that. And so I was talking to her in the car, and I refused to not talk like this, and I did.
I can see why it didn't last.
Yeah, she was a saint. That woman was a saint.
That woman had the patience of a saint.
But this factors in the story, actually, because we're driving along, and we've been driving for miles because it's a lot. It's a big state, like all the states in the states, and so she says, "I'll really," in her English accent, she says, "I fancy some sort of ice cream." And I said, "Okay, darling, we'll go on. We'll get you all an ice cream." And we pull over into this like little town in Mississippi, and it's like I can't remember Nowhereville, Mississippi, and just off the the highway. And there's a kind of a fake Dairy Queen. You know, they have this Dairy Queen thing. It was called Dairy Princess or something, And we get out the car, and she goes up to the booth, and there's a teenage girl, local girl, behind the thing, and she says the girl says, "Can I help you, ma'am?" And my girlfriend, who went to a kind of a posh school in London,
girls' school,
a girls' school in London.
Okay, lovely.
And she says, yes, I'd like a banana split, please. And the girl says nothing. She just looks at her like she doesn't understand. This could be a Martian talking to her. And she says, "Ma'am," and she says, "I'd love a banana split, please. I'd like a banana split, please." And, everybody in the UK would know what she was talking about. But this girl literally could not understand her. And I said, "Shall I want a banana split?" And she said, "Oh, yes, sir, right away."
Yeah. I've had it, even in California, I've had stuff where people don't know what the fuck I'm talking about.
Really?
And I'm not particularly posh, but I'm quite clear-spoken, I think. It's it's an interesting country with... It's a country that doesn't look outwards. Let's just say that, I would say. I was saying to you before we started recording that I think this song, it can be, put against any of his greatest work, I think, and it holds up. And it reminded me of the 60 Minutes interview where he says, "I can't write songs like that anymore." He's like, "I can do other things, though." Well, this is the other thing.
Yeah.
This is the other thing. And this is the other thing he's talking about. And to me, it's just as, and in some ways, more interesting. I mean, I think for me, actually, strangely, as a younger Bob Dylan fan, I initially fell in love with the early folk stuff, and then I obviously heard the classic electric stuff. But it was as I was really getting obsessed with Bob Dylan that I started listening to Time Out of Mind onwards. And it feels, to me, some of that's my favourite work. And the Dylan I think of, this kind of older, sardonic, raised eyebrow.
Yeah, the raised eyebrow is a little... I think it allows more room for... the listener, that's sort of sardonic rather than sneering.
Yes.
Like the sneering, which, God knows I love, but you have to sort of like hold on and, he'll pull you along at 100,000 miles an hour and you don't even, you lose track of everything. But the sardonic Dylan rambles and ambles and takes little byways and... I like that certainly as much.
Yeah. Hi, Bobcats. If you enjoy Bob Dylan approximately and would like access to longer bonus episodes,
early access to all episodes,
plus a whole range of exclusive membership benefits,
consider becoming a Bobsessive over at our Patreon page.
You'll get all that for just £5 a month.
Oh, and if you're going to sign up, please do so via a web browser rather than the Patreon app.
Or Apple take 30% of our Patreon fee.
Because money doesn't talk, it swears.
Oh, God said to Abraham, "Kill me a son." Abe said, "Man, you must be putting me on." God said, "No." Abe said, "What?" God said, "You can do what you want, Abe, but the next time you see me coming, you better run." Well, Abe said, "Where you want this killing done?" God said, "Out on Highway 61.
Well, what can you say about Highway 61?
Our first real classic,
I
guess. Yeah. But this is interestingly, I was talking earlier in the episode, the folk stuff was what initially got me into Dylan. And then I remember, I think this was one of the first, obviously I knew like a Rolling Stone and blah, blah, blah. But when I've really got into Dylan, I remember that verse so clearly as being like, this guy's amazing. It's so funny and so witty and brilliant, and taking, it's quite, in America, it's kind of sacrilegious in 65 to be, kind of downplaying that in a way. The Beatles got in trouble for saying things about, they're likening themselves to Jesus and et cetera, et cetera. But as we've been talking about it, this is a quote from Dylan in Chronicles. So, Highway 61, the main thoroughfare of the country blues, begins about where I began. I always felt like I'd started on it, always had been on it, and could go anywhere, even down into the deep Delta country. It was the same road, full of the same contradictions, the same one-horse towns, the same spiritual ancestors. It was my place in the universe. Always felt like it was in my blood. And I think Highway 61 as an album, you know, what a shift of gears it was in his career. But it does feel like he's kind of, as he says in No Direction Home, I'm coming home. You know, it feels like this is him reaching, this is where I wanted to get to from where I started out.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's why it's such a fascinating song. And it runs from Duluth, where he was born, down to New Orleans. It's the blues highway. It follows the Mississippi River for most of its 1,400-mile journey. You know, and this is a song in a 12-bar blues. You know, we've heard it a million times, but it's got Dylan's a wit that can only come from Bob Dylan that I love about it. What are your thoughts about the song?
Well, of course, I love it, and I identify with it in a weird way, because to me it's kind of this great description of various nightmares. There's a Freudian nightmare, Abraham and his son, which I relate to personally. There's a family nightmare there. There's all the various mothers and daughters. And
first father on the 12th night of his
exactly.
Son. Can't even remember the numbers.
But the thing I think I relate to it mostly, or most strongly, is that it's an attack partially on the American way of
absolutely
not just the American way of life, but the American way of doing business.
I think it's kind of taking a jab at American capitalism. Personally,
and it's sort of small street level capitalism, which my family was into, and the Zimmerman Furniture and Appliance Company was, it was on a high street. It was, they weren't moguls or anything, and I'll leave aside the Oedipal struggle for now, but my grandfather and my Uncle Sam, they were Mack the Finger and Louis the King. I mean, my grandfather's company and my Uncle Sam's company, my grandfather used to be in business with my father, but my father, his Oedipal struggle was so huge that he bought his own father out of the business, gave him all the money he had, and he went across the street to my Uncle Sam's place. And anyway, what Sam and my grandfather, what they did is they used to buy up items that had been salvaged from fires and train wrecks. So everything from slightly burnt furniture to dented cans of soup. And they'd store them in this 6-story warehouse. And they'd resell them. And so when I hear this verse, which I'm going to do in the voice of, I'm not sure why, even though we're not from New York, we're from Winnipeg, Canada. But whenever I hear a businessman like my father, he always sounds like Jackie Mason.
Okay.
So this makes sense of the line to me. Well, Mack the Finger said to Louis the King, I got 40 red, white, and blue shoestrings and 1,000 telephones that don't ring. Do you know where I can get rid of these things? And Louis the King said, let me think for a minute, son. And he said, yes, I think it can be easily done. Just take everything down to Highway 61. And I've heard at dinners. Exactly. My dad and my grandfather would literally say, do you know where I can get rid of these things? They would probably had 40 red, white, and blue, or in Canada, shoestrings with little maple leaves on them. And the question was, how do I get rid of this? And Bob is to me, that's really nobody could convince me otherwise. That is Bob's take on small time, street level American capitalism. Yeah,
it's that kind of the American make a quick buck, 40 red, white, and blue, and 1,000 telephones that don't even fucking work. Where can I get rid of this? Don't you worry, we'll let me think about it for a minute. So, and I also love the other real main jab, I think, at the American way of doing business is sort of like, what is it? Trying to create a next world. We found a promoter. Just get some bleachers and we'll watch the world burn, and we'll pay for price of admittance.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, actually, I was thinking about that as well today. In that, it reminded me. I thought, put some bleachers out in the sun. I thought, what does that remind me of? And I remembered, I'm a big boxing fan. We haven't, and I know you are too, and we've not really discussed this.
No, we will at some point.
But, we will right now, because have you, it occurred to me that, Dylan is a boxing fan, and he owned a gym in Santa Monica. He even, I noticed his latest paintings that are just about to be displayed. There's one called Boxing Gym. There's a guy hitting a heavy bag. Anyway, have you heard of Tex Rickard?
No.
Well, he was, there's no reason why you should have, but he was like the Don King of his day.
Okay.
Or he was the Frank Warren or whatever. But he was he invented world-class
modern
boxing promotion.
Yeah.
And in 1909, he'd been denied a license to for the World Heavyweight Championship between James Jeffries and Jack Johnson. He'd been denied a license in San Francisco, probably, I imagine, because Jack Johnson was black, and they didn't, but for whatever reason. So they had this certified heavyweight championship fight, and where to put it, like at the last minute, San Francisco denied them the right. So he literally put some bleachers out in the sun, and it wasn't, unfortunately, anywhere near Highway 61. It was outside of Reno, Nevada. So you can't make a case for Highway 61. But that really reminds me of those guys in the song. And it's the bleachers.
American ingenuity.
Exactly. It's like nobody had done that before. So where are we going to... Well, you know what? We'll build our own thing. We'll put some bleachers out in the sun, and everyone will come.
Yeah.
Because we'll promote the hell out of it. And it's... especially now, I think I do tend to have one little jab at promoters, people... moguls.
I certainly do now that they're in the pockets of the Saudi royal family.
But I'm actually talking about promoters like like Elon Musk. That's sort of self-promoters and
promoters.
What they'd call entrepreneurs now. But they're the same shysters that, and the roving gambler, there's a roving gambler who's very bored at the moment. I don't believe he's trying to create the next world war, but I think he's trying to get stuff done, and destroy stuff to build stuff. It doesn't really make any sense. But he's got a roving eye, and he's a man who likes to keep on moving, and he's a gambler, and he's hooked up with this promoter who, by the time this goes out, maybe has been shown the door. But the promoter and the roving gambler they're dangerous. But they're not afraid to break a few, dishes.
Crack a few skulls.
Break a few eggs. I've never engaged in this kind of thing before. I don't, but I've got a good feeling here that it's all going to work out. We'll just put some bleachers out in the sun.
I think it's an album, and each verse of this has two characters talking to each other, essentially. It's really simple but difficult to do, and he does it so well. I love Highway 61 Revisited as an album because it's an album of characters either invented or think about the amount of characters in Desolation Row, and you've got Tom Thumb and Queen Jane. It's all these. It's a really interesting part of Dylan's songwriting journey where he's creating these absurdist characters. I just like to go through some of the stuff I found on the different characters.
Go.
So Georgia Sam, there's many different things. So Blind Willie McTell occasionally recorded under the name Georgia Sam. Also the subject of Anna Lee Chisholm's song Georgia Sam Blues, which we think it's probably that one. And Poor Howard is Lead Belly's song Poor Howard / Green Corn from 1938. And they're both vagabond characters. So Georgia Sam abandons his lover and Poor Howard murders his wife, which is probably why he pointed with his gun kind of thing. Mack the Finger, Mack the Knife, I guess, originally based on a highwayman. So there we are. We've got Highway 61. Louis the King's a con man in Huckleberry Finn who claims to be the lost Dauphin of France. So as you say, it's these street-level shysters. Yeah. And as I've written here, it seems to be a jibe at American capitalism. He's got all this worthless shit. How can we get rid of it? Don't worry, we'll find a way kind of thing. And obviously The Roaming Gambler is a famous folk song that Dylan covered early in his career, but also on the Never Ending Tour has done quite a few times.
I was listening to Highway 61, just walking along, listening to it, and Tombstone Blues came on. And the line, but I was thinking about this, podcast and talking about this song. So the line, Jack the Ripper, who sits at the head of the Chamber of Commerce, which I'd always heard, and I thought, right, so you're saying that capitalism run by a serial killer. The Chamber of Commerce is like, hi there, boys, I'm the head of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm your friendly, head of the community. But no, Jack the Ripper, who sits at the head of and that's just one of the things. I mean, Tombstone Blues, I'm sure we'll cover, down the line. And it's everything a Dylan song should be. I mean, but speaking of what made up the song, so we're used to Abraham's hip address to God, and you probably read this, but people say he was very influenced by Lord Buckley. Do you know Lord Buckley is now not really very well known, but Lord Buckley's album is on the mantelpiece on Bringing It Back Home.
Oh.
There's, and Dylan was a big Lord Buckley fan. And so Lord Buckley, his specialty was to take biblical events or sometimes Shakespearean events and turn them into hip speak. Like he was a huge pothead. He was like stoned for every day of his life. And he would go to these nightclubs, and his big thing was his Julius Caesar, Mark Antony's funeral oration. I don't know if you know it, but I found it online. And so the first few lines are, hipsters, flipsters, and finger-poppin' daddies, knock me your lobes. I come to lay Caesar out, not to hip you to him. The bad jazz that a cat blows wails long after he's cut out. The groovy is often stashed with their frames.
Knock your lobes is my favourite way of saying listen up I've ever heard in my entire life. That's fantastic.
It's brilliant, isn't it? And so,
that.
When Abe says, man, you must be putting me on, and all that, stuff, that hip jive stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's people generally agree that he was very influenced by Buckley.
Interesting. I'm going to have to check that out. It's one of those that he's known live for rearranging his songs. I've never heard, because he's done Highway 61 thousands of times.
Yeah.
But it's rarely that different. He doesn't rearrange it particularly. It's still that 12-bar blues. And when he was playing that awful period in sort of 2005 where he kept playing the keyboard live, it was the same kind of arrangement, and it's interesting. It's such an iconic song.
I know. I was listening to it today on the tour that he did with the band, the second one, and it's very straightforward. Yeah. I think he's very proud of it, as he should be. I mean, he's really proud of his work, particularly from that period.
It's one of his most played songs live. I think All Along the Watchtower is the first played it, but it's up there. It's certainly up there.
Yeah. I think one of the things another thing that I love about the song is and lots of Dylan songs, and we could probably do a whole episode on Dylan and numbers, because I think one way of looking at it anyway is that he doesn't trust numbers. I think that's one of the reasons that he uses so many numbers. I get the feeling that weirdly he's taking the piss.
Number 12 and 35 comes to mind.
Well, yes, exactly.
What the fuck does that mean?
I think the more I think about it, when he says, the fifth daughter, the seventh son, the first father, the second mother, 12th night, 40 shoestrings, 100,000 telephones, Highway 61 itself. I don't think he trusts the logic and the control of numbers. I think he's trying to use numbers to show that nothing adds up, that everything is absurd, and that religion doesn't make sense. And he did that up to a point. At one point, he thought it did make sense. But the government doesn't make sense. Nuclear family doesn't make sense. And particularly, I thought, what is my complexion, she said, is much too white. I thought, is it maybe your skin color doesn't even make sense? I don't know. That's a line that's always puzzled.
Yes, I've always taken it to be perhaps she's pregnant. She goes so far that I've gotten pregnant and I shouldn't have got. But that's to me. But that's a very subjective thing.
I mean, it's weird because he says, "Come here, step into the light."
Step into the light. So, you're right.
You're right.
Yeah.
But if somebody's complexion is too white and you put them under the light, it's going to
make them more white.
It's going to make them more white. So that's
interesting about numbers. I'm just thinking now, like just on the next album, Blonde on Blonde, you've got Rainy Day Women, 12 and 35, fourth time around, obviously 5 Believers. You know?
Yes. Well, do you know what is the song where he goes, I had... He would change it a lot in concert. I had $50,000 and 292 cents. There's one of the songs where he keeps changing it pretty much every time he does it. He changes the amount of cash that he's talking about. I think it might be barbed wire, sitting on a barbed wire fence.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Whatever that is. Anyway, yeah. But I think when I heard that, and I heard it in concert version of it, and I thought, yeah, he's taking the piss out of numbers. I mean, who does that? Only Bob Dylan would do that. But I just think he doesn't trust anything that's immovable, like 1 is 1. I don't think he likes the fact that 2 is.
I don't think he likes
2.
certainty, which in general I don't think he likes, which is why I don't think he liked being called the voice of a generation. I also think it's why I can imagine how jarring it would have been as a fan to see him, coming out as this born-again Christian and releasing these albums, because it's the first time he's gone completely opposite. He says, oh no, there's black and white, there's the damned and there's the saved, and that's it. And to me it's like everything Bob Dylan stands against, that there's a definite answer to anything. Yeah, in a way. I always talk about kind of, because it's not that long ago really that I became a Bob Dylan fan, 13, 14 years ago. And from this album, I then watched Don't Look Back, and then, found out the story around the time and what was going on in Newport and all that stuff. And it's something I have my own podcast, and I always ask one of the question, what do you think makes a great artist? And people sometimes ask me the question back, and I always say fearlessness. And I think for me, as someone who would like to be an artist, is in some ways but doesn't create enough, Dylan is such inspiration to me, because he truly is fearless. I mean, to be going on that UK tour, playing songs from this album and Blonde on Blonde, 2 of the albums that would go on to become the most influential albums of all time, and to be booed and pilloried and still say, fuck you, it's not British music, it's American music, you're a liar and all that stuff. I just think that the guts and the dedication and I'm trying to find the right words, the belief in his own work to do that is staggering to me. I can't see how anyone would do that and not have doubt and think, is this shit? Are they right? Don't boo me anymore. I'm telling you, boo me. Man.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think it's great that there's certain songs, because I think even Dylan lost faith in himself. He lost faith in we don't know what his faith is, but I think the one thing that he keeps coming back to are songs like Highway 61. That was Bob Dylan Approximately, with Kerry Shale
and Daniel Crespin. Produced by Robin Guise.
And recorded at Lipsync Post, Soho, London.
For longer bonus episodes, join our Patreon feed.
And if you have a Bobsessive friend, please spread the word.
It ain't quite the end.
We'll just bid farewell till we meet again.